Hello, my name is Martin Hartkopf. I'm the head of care and consulting at i-doit. Welcome to the presentation. Feel free to use the chat function. Slide we will have afterwards, if I understood right. And we will answer the questions at the end of the presentation if you have any. And also we will be available for you after the presentation in the i-doit virtual room to chat with you. So as we are short on time, if there are questions left over, just join us in the room and we are there for you and answer your questions. i-doit is built by a company called Synetics. We're seated in Düsseldorf in Germany. We were founded in 1996 and now we have 25 years of existing in IT business. So 25 years of experience in the IT industry have flowed into our IT documentation solution, i-doit. So you find many use cases in this software with that you can solve many all your problems. What is i-doit? It's one documentation tool for all use cases, which means on the one hand, it is an open system where you can create your own objects and your own categories, so you can modify it to your needs. And on the other hand, we deliver with the software already a lot of things so that you can start right away after installing the software. We will have a look at the software later on. I just want to show you some resources if you find this topic interesting, where you can look up for our software and find some more information. At first, would this be our online demo where you can test the software and check it? You can find it on the demo.i-doit.com. You can log in there with the standard user and then you can test the software with some demo data and use cases and look the software itself. Then we have our full documentation. Yes, for a documentation tool, you also need the documentation. And this is our knowledge base or online handbook. You can find this also here in the URL. The system requirements are found there, how to install it, how to manage, and documentation of our features, and a lot of use cases are described there also. Another thing which I want to point you to are the add-ons, which you can use with i-doit. They are really useful because they extend the functionality of the software. We can connect to different other systems like ticketing, like monitoring or discovery, or we have some use cases there for certification. So maybe you have a look at that also and can look up which extra functionality comes with that. Last but not least, if you want to try the software for a longer time in your own IT environment, you can also go for an evaluation version, which you can simply get by pressing the green button on our webpage, and then we will lead you to all the resources you need. For installation issues, we have 3 possibilities there for you. This is the automatic installation, which is a script which is run really easily on any Linux distribution. But also we have a description there for the manual installation if you like, or if you want it really easy, you can just download our virtual appliance, which can be imported in your virtual environment and then usable with one step. With i-doit, you can document your entire IT environment. For example, if you have network configurations you want to store, like switches and other things that are there in the network area. If you want to document your infrastructure from cabling to buildings and other things. We have a lot of in the client ecosystem, which you can use in the software. Servers, we have different types from the normal physical to the virtual machines. When it comes to software and licensing, we have a lot of management tools in the software, and also you can build your IT service catalog in it to give you some plus. The software can be fully customized, as said, by yourself. You don't need a consultant from us. It's really easy to use, I think, and you can define your own objects and categories so that all your needs are solved by this. But as always, a lot of marketing words. Let's dive into the software and show you a little bit of the things that are possible there. I just will switch the screen and then go to full screen here. First, it's a web application which runs on a LAMP stack. So normally you have a Linux distribution as an operating system. On this top, we have an Apache web server, MySQL database, and it's written purely in PHP. So you can install it centrally and access it with a normal browser. We have an internal user management, which means you can either generate your users in i-doit internally, or you can make use of an LDAP source over a connection, so that you can directly use your Active Directory users or LDAP or whatever you have there, so that the user management can stay where it is today. After login, I get the possibility to select the tenant here, which means we could provide more than one IT documentations on one server. We call that tenants, where we can divide different documentations from each other. So if you like, you can use that also. It's a special license you can use. And after the login, then we are in the software. And I think I will take you a little bit around here. We start on the dashboard, where you can place some of our widgets, which are mini applications. Some of them just display simple text. Then you can pack some bookmarks here. You can run reports or other things. So there are some widgets. The use of that is to present the user with some information when he logs on to the IT documentation, so that he is informed about things that are going on or things that would last change, things like that. Then we have our navigation bar here on the top, which starts with the My Do It button, where you can set a status filter, which is normally used if you only want to see things that are currently ordered or which are for repair, or all the things that are currently in operation. You can filter here, and then you only see those things which are in operation, for example, in the database. Then you can put some bookmarks here. And last thing here in the My Do It section is the My Workflows, which is a mini ticketing tool, which many of the small customers use because they have no ticketing tools so far. They can assign tasks here to people. They will get an email and can accept this. And afterwards, the one who has assigned the task will get an answer if this task is finished or in which situation it is. Then we start here with the object type groups, which start with contacts. There we have customers and organizations we can document. We can build person groups here, or we can, for example, have our persons here, which are also able to log into i-doit, or which are simply synchronated through the Active Directory. Persons in an IT documentation are really usable because you sometimes want to say who is the user of an application, who is the service manager of a service or something like that. So it's normally a good thing to synchronize your Active Directory users here so that you can assign them to the things that they have to do with. Then we have the part of information where we can manage our contracts that we have. We have our emergency planning here. You can simply upload files to i-doit to use them in the documentation. We have our license managing here, or we have our service catalog, which we can use to display the services that we are having today and how they depend to each other and how they are built and things like that. In the software section, we can find applications and operating systems, but our other specific things like cluster services or full documentation of databases and things like that. And in the hardware section, you can find anything from client to server. Everything that is physically there has an IP address or something like that. There are a lot of objects which already come with i-doit. In the network section, we have the logical layer 2 and 3, which are the VLANs and the normal IP address management list that we have to manage our IP addresses. But we also can define here net zones or supernets, or we can document our WAN connections if we have. In the infrastructure section, we can see everything which is needed for cabling, for example. There's no difference between power cabling or Ethernet or glass cabling or something like that. So we are very flexible with this. And you also find everything that you have to use when you do cabling, like network outlets, patch panels, and other things. So everything should be there. And you find here everything which could be a location, maybe a building, a floor, a room, or even a rack. All the things where you can place something, so you can document where things are placed at the moment. That's a quick overview of all the objects and the object types that we have. Let's go, for example, to a normal server. You always see a number here behind the objects, which displays how much objects at the moment are currently documented from this type. And when I select the survey on the left side, I can see the list of the servers that are here in the i-doit installation. And I can also see some information of these objects. All these lists can be configured so that you can, for example, for a server display, first site, it's its name and its IP address, and for a contact, maybe the telephone number and the email address. So for every object type, you can define how these lists are built up and what they, for information, are displayed on first site. When you want to if you want to know more about the object, you can go directly on one of those objects by clicking. And then you see here on the left side, the so-called categories. This is the place where the data, the documentation data is then stored and where you can enter it. All these categories are assigned at this moment here to this object, and you by yourself can define which category you need and which not. So you can configure the whole assignment of the categories to the objects, which you also should do when you start, so that only information is there that you really need for your use cases. We will go to some of them to see what they build up. For example, we have the accounting category here where you can store how much has the server cost initially, or what is the operation expense of the device. You see where you have ordered it, and here maybe you have a defect or something like that, and you can see that you have still guarantee here. Contact directly then the customer where you bought that. So that's really helpful for that. Or maybe you want to make a report for your budget planning at the end of the year of all costs that the servers have. So this is really useful for that. Then we have here something called cabling, where we can see all the connections that this device at this moment has. We see that it has 4 network ports here on the right side, which one is directly connected to a switch here, and the other 3 are connected to a patch panel, which are also connected to a switch here at the end. Or on the other side, we can see that it has 2 power outlets, which are connected here directly to a socket. And if we want, we can look furthermore in these cabling views. So if you want to see how the server is connected and how it gets its power, we can also spread this here more open and see how the power is distributed to the single cables to this device, which is really helpful, not only for power, it's also helpful for network documentation and cabling and other things. So this visualization helps you to see how the things are connected and everything is connected right, which is also always a good thing. Another category here is the contact assignment. We normally assign users or organizations here in the contact assignment to see how people have dependencies to this object. And we normally define also a role that they have, so that we say that the first user here is the user of the device, and the second one is the administrator, and the third one we see is the supplier. By defining this role, we always know how the dependency between this person and this object is worked out. All these dependencies that objects have, we can look at a list here so that we see what relations this object has, which is really important in i-doit, because all these dependencies show us the complexity of the infrastructure we have. We can see here that the server has a dependency to networks because he is getting an IP address from this. We see that it has a dependency here to this location because it is seated there. We have the contact assignments here, and all these dependencies are built up by using the documentation and entering the information. And we not only can see this dependency here in this list, we can also graphically look at this information. And then we could see, for example, here, this is a view of the service catalog, that the server is for the backup service really important, and that it is mentioned in the emergency plan. This is a selection of dependencies only. We could also look at all the dependencies that the server has, and there we see that this is a good thing to filter this information. So we have the feature here that we can only see maybe the cabling, or only see the services that a server has, or the organigram or something like that. This is really helpful because when we spread it more open here the dependencies such a device over more spots, then we see easily that the filtering here brings the real effect, and that we get an overview over complex situations with that. So just keep in mind, dependencies are created normally automatically when you connect something here. So if you, for example, go here and select the operating system, then a dependency to this object of dependency is here built. And this can be used to see it in the CMDB Explorer, or it can be used to jump between different objects to get to the information. The operating system, for example, here, when I click on that, I will then jump to the operating system object and can look up further information in this. And here I will find also the backup server, because these dependencies go in both sides and can be accessed from both sides. So we can jump between these dependencies also. Then we have something here like the form factor, which is entered because we have a rack management in i-doit also, where you can assign the server to, and if you want to place the server into a rack, it's a good thing to say how big it is. Let's jump to the rack where the server is seated at the moment. And there you can see that it is seated here in the 40th slot. And you can see all the other servers or devices which are also in this rack. We always have a front here or a back, because sometimes you have a patch panel in the front and a switch in the back or something like that. So you have your both sides where you can assign the devices. And you also can use here the slots for power installations or air conditioner, other things that are seated in this rack, which is sometimes also useful. Where an object is seated, or where the place of the object is, you can look up at any time in i-doit, because we have the location view here in the top. When you click on that, you change from the normal object view to the location view and instantly know where you are at the moment. You see that we have the rack here, which is seated in a server room in the basement here. And this basement is placed in a powerhouse here, which is a building. So these places also are really a good thing to document where things are and show when you search for something, or if you want to know what servers are all in this rack, you can make a good use of that and look up here. For places, we have also an add-on which is for free, which is called Floor Plan, where you just can upload maps of a floor of a building or something like that, and then place objects on this map, which is useful for finding objects in bigger rooms, or if you have a big area where things are placed, such maps are more helpfully to document where things are placed in normally. So for locations, you can, if you like, use a lot of functions in i-doit. We also have the possibility to document with geodata or other things. So you should never lose equipment if you know where it is. Then we have other categories here, which are the normal asset data for the server, like how much memory is in it, what hard disks are in there, which graphic card is installed, which is normal asset data. For many information we see here, we have the possibility to use connections to other tools to import this automatically, like a discovery tool like JDisk or something like that, so that you don't have to enter the information manually. So you can automate this, which is always helpful for every information which is changing fast, so that the information in the documentation is always actual and you don't lose the actuality of the software. In the end, it's important for you that you learn that i-doit works like a framework where you can select yourself what objects you want to use and how these objects are formed out. We deliver a lot of objects which are normally IT-affine with i-doit already, so you can start instantly to document things and get ideas by this. So you don't have to define how a server looks like or what a client is or other things here. You get this configuration with the software when you install it. The only thing that you have to do is to choose which objects you need and how these objects are defined. You should define how this list looks and other things. And then normally you are ready to start using the software as it is without any hesitation. Yeah. That's a first quick view to the software. I don't know how we are on time, how much time is left. Maybe I can show some more use cases. Okay, 2 minutes. So then let's, for example, go to the service catalog, which is also an interesting thing. We all know that in the complexity of a normal IT environment today, we have a lot of things that we are, do for our customers, or things that we do internally. We have software, we have servers, we have services, we have things that are running and that are important for us. But it's normally a long list, and normally I would think about something like a service catalog in the IT documentation, because by this you can also see how all this complexity works together, and you have something like a phone book where you can look up if an application does not run and you get a call at the first level. They can look up everything here and can look up in these services who is responsible or how they can work with that. For example, we have something which is called a web service Apache here, where we can define the service itself, how it, which components are for the service that it can run. We have a logbook for the service, that we can see what was changed on it. We have relations here or service types we can define. And this helps us to understand who's responsible also for the service, because we can look up the service manager of the services here. If there's something going wrong and the web service does not run, we know who to call because it is documented here. But also we can do troubleshooting with that because of the visualization functions of i-doit, because we can pack this complexity into an easy view of it, and then even a person which works on the first level can understand how the two web servers or websites that we provide externally for our customers are running and what dependencies these services have. Here, for example, we have those two web pages which are running here in the outside. Then we have the web service, which is beneath of it and which these two sites depend on. And this web service is running on the data center network, and we have a cluster here where it runs on. So this is an easy view of this whole environment, which or the dependencies that these two websites have. And if something is going wrong, we can look up here easily how these connections are and how all things work together. This just as an additional use case. Okay. Okay, then thank you very much for the time in this presentation. Now I will change back to the from the software instantly to my slides here again, and we can do some Q&A, I think. And if we have some open questions, or if you want to see something more, as said, we will meet into the i-doit room later on, where you can join, so you can ask questions there also.
Thank you, Martin, for your presentation. It was more demo presentation, I would call, than the theoretical part, really enjoying that part, but moving through practical things. But coming back a little bit to the theoretical side, what would you recommend for organization if we don't have any CMDB, we don't have any experience, for how we should start and with what?
Yeah, it's the first question we always get from our customers. We have a lot of best practice because we are doing this business now for more than 10 years with the software. The first thing you should do is not to start with the software right away. The first thing is you should do planning. You should define your use cases very concrete, so that you know what problems you have today and what you think, which information you need to solve those problems. And in this design phase, you should also get all members of the company together, so that all the problems that you have today which respond to your searching for information. You have documents over different shares in different places. You have a lot of information only in the heads of the people or other things, so that you write all these problems down and then think about which information would help me in this use case to solve this, or to get better, to get more efficiency. And from the problem, you can move then to the solution by defining what you need in the software, which objects, which fields, and other things. But you should always do this planning in the beginning, and also you should define who is responsible for the different parts. Otherwise, everybody would run in different directions, and chaos would be the normal situation you find when such a software without planning is going into production. Yeah.
So the planning and the responsibility should be the first step.
Yes. Indeed,
yeah.
Yes.
And when choosing the, okay, so we can imagine a situation that organization already done these two things, and we need to choose the software. Of course, I do it's the best, but in general, on what aspect should the organization look when we are choosing CMDB software?
It depends on what you want to do. Normally, with every software, I would look the market. I would make a bullet point list of things that I want to have 100%, things that I want maybe, and the things that are nice to have, so that I can check up with the software if it needs my things that I want to do with it. Regarding i-doit, I would say that we are really flexible, because you can modify everything. And this is in the design of the software to modify it. You often have software which can be modified, but normally they say better don't do it, because then you don't follow the standard or something like that. This is a characteristic of i-doit, that you have or should modify it to your needs, and only have those functionality that you really want to use later on, because you must learn that every information that you do in the documentation must be altered as the environment is changing, as long as you use the software. Otherwise, the documentation data would be outdated and useless. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for your answers, and thank you one more time for your presentations. Now switch back to the Finnish language, and we will be moving forward. So
yeah, thank you for having me, and thank the audience for your interest, and yeah, have a nice day.